large proportion of this money, we're told, went towards civilianising those people who had been formerly within the state forces. Now, we're sitting here now in November. Today is the 30th of November, and as recently as 3 days ago in the newsletter, one of the criticisms about why the state forces haven't been able to civilianise has been the rise in dissident activity. So as recently as this week, an article about why people who were paid off following the pattern reforms, following the civilianisation of state forces, were re-employed has been because their particular skills were needed with the increase in dissident activity. Now, if you transfer that to, in spite of the considerable amount of resources that is afforded to it, if you transfer that to trying to civilianise people who have been former paramilitaries, without the amount of money or the resources that has been afforded the state civilianisation, well then you can see how the process is quite problematic. Which takes me right up now to the conflict transformation programme known as the Action for Community Transformation. Because, as I said at the start, implementing the statement of intent by the UVF and the RHC has been quite problematic because there's no resources to do it. In spite of some initial finances that were drawn down by Northern Ireland Alternatives and were accessed through the International Fund for Ireland, what was created was a political activism within ACT that, as we speak today, doesn't have any resources. So the allegations that people want paramilitaries just to go away isn't easily implemented when you consider that the civilianisation of the state forces, in spite of the hundred millions of pounds that's been afforded it, hasn't been successful, even as I pointed out this week as outlined in the newsletter. However, this doesn't stop ACT continuing to do what they do, and the way they do it is what I'm about to introduce you to now. Because strategically, and if we outline ACT within the concept of DDR, strategically what we're attempting to do is not to reintegrate people back into the communities, given that they never left them in the first place. What we're attempting to do is to restructure communities. And by that what we mean is those people who within their communities seen it in the best interest of those communities to take up arms to defend them, what we're encouraging them to do now is in a peaceful time is to build peace by reconstructing the communities whereby they're seen as playing a positive role. And how do you go about doing that if you don't have a strategy to do it? So what ACT have started with is a transitional training programme that prepares people to engage better within the communities they reside in. And that's done in a number of ways. The first is that people who are seen as being former paramilitaries identify that first and foremost as individuals they need to transform their behaviour. So what we do is we create a process that encourages them to do that. We get them to reflect on the past, and they do that as individuals. Then we build on that reflection by getting them to work through what it is as a group, how the group dynamics affect them playing a more positive role in the community. And all of that is underpinned then about reconstructing their communities within the societal issues around non-violence, around restorative practices, around peace building. So following a 4-month period, they come out better engaged to prepare, better engaged to play a more meaningful role within the community. And the way we do that is through political activism. And of course, because historically the political voice of the UVF and the RHC has been through the Progressive Unionist Party, what we have now is a political activism partnership that's about supporting former paramilitaries and being politically active within their community. And that doesn't necessarily have to result in them joining the PUP, but the origin of it is if people quickly identify how activism within the community is underpinned by being political, what we mean is that if they're working by and large for the greater good of the community, this in and of itself is a political act. And we're better to harness that political activism than through the Progressive Unionist Party. So what we've done is we've set up a number of community projects, the length and breadth of the country, that we call area action groups. So for example, we have area action groups in 7 different geographical localities. The objectives of an area action group is to build on the partnerships and networking within the community. It's about contributing positively, so in other words, helping reconstruct it. And the way we do that is through themed pieces of work. And a themed piece of work may differ across a locality. So for example, in the area action groups in the Greater Belfast, there may be a number of interfaces, and they may require a response that's around positive engagement with the community. However, if we go to somewhere like North Down, that themed piece of work may not be as relative. So we're looking for what's relative within a particular community around the reconstruction of it. And what that's given rise to is a number of things like youth engagement, like engaging in culture, like creating narratives, archiving projects, like telling stories whereby we're involved in peace building, involved in reconciliation, and so on and so forth. So as we speak, there is 7 of these area action groups, and we've engaged through collectively through each a number of approximately 1,600 men. Now of course, what does that mean? Well, if we don't look for viable, realistic opportunities of building their capacity, then what this will be left to is a half a dozen people trying to implement the entire project of Action for Community Transformation. So what we did was we surveyed the 1,600 men, 700 took part and identified a number of different things. Some of those things were what would prevent them getting involved more positively in their community through an area action group. And some of the things, it shouldn't surprise anyone, that has emerged is not only is it problematic because it's time consuming, it impinges on their social life and their family life, but also some people haven't engaged in this type of work before. And again, to repeat myself, that shouldn't surprise anyone when we talk about originally how I started this, about supporting people moving from conflict to peace. And of course, if there's no resources to do that, how can we achieve what it is we're setting out to achieve? So if I come full circle to where this started and about how it is the process to implement the UVF and RHC Statement of Intent. Our argument would be that anyone who's a member of those organisations are in it for political reasons. And our political objective now is in reconstructing communities and building the capacity of those people who formerly used conflict to sustain the union but are now looking to do it in a more peaceful mode. And of course, what we suggest is that peaceful mode is through Action for Community Transformation.